Blockchain may be new, but some of the technologies behind it are actually quite old. Here are 8 key technologies that had to exist before blockchain could be invented. The first one is older than YouTube and Facebook. It was developed around 2001. Our first technology that was created about 2001 is the Sha-256 encryption. Now, encryption is a process that you can put the data in, scramble it up, and once your output is there, if you know the key, you can then be able to unscramble it. It's a lot like this lock. Once it's locked, if I know the combination, it's very easy to open. The thing with Sha-256, though, is that it's nearly impossible to reverse engineer without an incredibly powerful computer. So Satoshi Nakamoto, in his implementation of Bitcoin in his white paper, suggested the use of Sha-256 as the encryption method. Our second technology is a little bit older. In fact, it came from the previous century. You know, as a corollary to the Byzantine generals problem, where 2 generals on a battlefield needed to make sure they got messages across the valley to another general, the problem with that was that they didn't know whether the messages would actually make it there or not, or if the message was faked by the time they got it there. Well, that's similar to the idea that if you have 2 files, for example, and you look at the 2 files and they look almost identical, I mean, what in the world is going to help me to understand what's different and what's the most accurate copy of the data? Well, the Byzantine fault tolerance was invented in 1999 to solve just this problem. And it enables blockchains to know which copy of the data is the latest, the best, and the one that the consensus algorithm has in fact accepted as the truth. Our next technology came out before the Harry Potter books in 1993. Do you ever get frustrated when you're trying to log into a website and they make you do these stupid problems? These little things called CAPTCHAs? You know, it's nonsensical little work. It has no value whatsoever. But it provides a bit of work that proves that I am the right individual logging in. So, you know, I can go here. This one says I'm supposed to match one of these images. So I'm supposed to match a cat to other cats. So I can go ahead and I select each one of these cats and make sure that I don't select the dogs or the hamsters or the weeds. And I've done a little bit of work that lets the system know that I'm really who I say I am logging in. Well, the same thing happens with what they call proof of work. The initial blockchains were made out of proof of work algorithms that created work for the miners to do so that they could prove that they were legitimate miners. And as they did the work, they would then submit the work. And when they successfully went through all this work, they were able to close the blocks and record the transactions. By doing so, they got rewards. So the system worked, and that's the way it works even today. People born about the same time as the next technology have receding hairlines and a little bit of gray hair by now. It was created in 1983. Digital currencies were actually invented right around 1983. You know, prior to that, it was credit cards and other things. But the first time it actually tapped into your checking account and really was digital cash came in 1983 when they really invented the debit card. And with the debit card, you could go to a retailer of any sort and you could then present the card and it would check your bank account. And the whole point of the invention here was that it had a blind signature protocol. In other words, in order to not overdraw your checking account, the bank wanted to know how much you were spending and whether you had cash in your account. Well, in order to transmit that data, it had to have a signature that says you were really who you were. So the blind signature created the ability to use that technology and digitally transfer money from one bank account, in your case, to a vendor, in their case, and pay for the product. It made convenience just at the forefront of being able to shop. Bitcoin, of course, later implements this idea of a digital currency within the blockchain realm. Okay, let's play a little game here. If you're not feeling old yet, how about if you hit that subscribe button? But if you're starting to groan a bit because these technologies are getting a little bit older than you are, how about if you hit the like button too? Because our next tech, the people born in that era were recording movies on VCR tapes and pirating music on cassette tapes. Our next tech came in 1979. So with the invention of Merkle trees, we have an efficient and effective way to validate the data that is within each block. So for example, we've got all this data. We've got all these pieces of files and records, and they all get pushed into a single block. And once they get put into a single block, if we can get it stuffed into the single block, once it gets pushed into a single block, how do I know that somebody hasn't just gone in here and taken one piece out, or modified or corrupted a particular piece of data? So the situation here becomes, how do I quickly validate that this data is the same as when I first created the block, that it's remained immutable or untouched? And the way that we did that is through Merkle trees. And Merkle trees is just a quick, efficient way to get a top-end cryptographic hash of the contents. And the way it happens is each individual piece of data within the file gets encrypted, and then the next two pieces of data together get encrypted to create one encryption, and then it creates and takes the next piece of data next to it and encrypts that up until you have this kind of like genealogy looking tree structure. And when you get finally to the top, you have one encrypted piece of data that represents all of the data in the file. Now, anything that gets modified within the file will change that top end Merkle tree encryption. And by changing that encryption, you know that it's been tampered with. And so we know that once we put this all together and have it completely encrypted and have that top end encryption, we know that it's remained untouched every time we check it. People who were born about the time of our tech number 6 are likely to feel a little bit nostalgic when they watch Stranger Things. It was created in 1976. So next we come along with digital signatures, and they emerged as a way to cryptographically verify that a signature was the actual person that sent the document, such as an email or electronic communications. This came along in 1976 as a way to take basically what we used to put in an envelope and take that letter that, we could sign, and you could verify a signature because you know the person's signature, or you can verify the person's handwriting and create a digital equivalent of that signature. So essentially, with the way we used to sign letters before, now we can sign documents and know that by the time they get to the recipient in an email or other communication, that document has been adequately signed by the actual person that it was intended to be sent from. Our next technology is actually older than Pop-Tarts and Diet Pepsi. Maybe that's why people were skinnier back in 1964. Okay, so what we have is a situation where early telephone communications and actually early electronic communications, like from universities and scientific establishments, were all done specifically through a hub and a spoke sort of system. You had a central area that it went to, and then it was pushed out to other locations. Well, eventually scientists realized that with the Cold War, they needed to have a much more distributed network in order to overcome potential damage to the network. So a distributed network was created back then, because basically a phone went to a hub, and a hub went to a switch, and the switch, of course, was the main part of the network. If any one of those pieces was destroyed, a major part of the network would also be destroyed. So distributed networks were kind of like what we see today with our current networks. And basically when we plug into the internet the way that we do now, we're plugging into what was created as a distributed network clear back in 1964 and is a major backbone of the way that Bitcoin is today distributed to make it more robust. So if you're looking at each of these technologies and can still remember really back when they did not exist, congratulations, you're as old as dirt like me. But I still have one more that is so old that I can't even remember when it was invented. So now, if you're not feeling old already, the next one is a technology that was invented long before I was even born. So what we've got is a situation where in order to have coins at all, we have to go clear back to the ancient Sumerians, who invented trade and who invented ledger systems and actual coins. So right here I have a replica of an ancient Sumerian tablet. And this tablet was one of the early records of a transaction that happened where a field was purchased with a gift of silver in a place called Anzukali. And it recorded the basic ledger, a basic transaction. It's really our earliest record of the many transactions. And then, of course, the Romans and the Greeks invent actual coinage, where they're actually forging precious metals into coinage that is actively traded in lieu of trading the actual property. So blockchain really has been a long time in coming. So if you liked what you saw in this video, please hit the like button. It'd be really great if you could subscribe too, so we could get this out to even more people. And we'll look forward to seeing you later. Thanks.